Good evening and welcome to this December 9th meeting of the Somerville School Committee.
Recording in progress.
Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2024, this meeting of the school committee will be conducted via hybrid participation. We'll post an audio recording, audio-video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the City of Somerville website and local cable access government channels. We will start with roll call. Dr. Carmona?
Through the chair, Ms. Barish.
Here.
Mayor Valentine. President Uwinkampen. Mr. Green. Here. Mr. Bitton.
Here.
Ms. Bitton.
Present.
Dr. Ackman.
Here.
Dr. Phillips.
Here.
Ms. Kripchen.
Here.
We have quorum.
All right, now we will start with a moment of silence and a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next we will introduce our interpreters. Spanish, do you want to unmute yourself?
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Ate Peñate, seré su intérprete esta noche. Para escuchar esta reunión, por favor, llenen el botón de su pantalla y seleccione el idioma español. Gracias.
And Portuguese? Portuguese, do you want to unmute yourself? All right, we'll come back. Haitian Creole, can you unmute yourself? Okay. Our first item of business is our school committee advisory reps. Are they here via Zoom? Okay, if they arrive, let me know. Okay, we do not have any public comment in person or on Zoom, so that brings us to the report of the superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. Through the chair, thank you to all the souls who are here and were brave enough to deal with the water, with the rain out there. So thank you for joining us tonight. So usually what I do at the opening of my report, superintendent report, I provide a theme for the session. And the theme tonight is all about the strategic plan. And we are really excited that we will be officially launching the strategic plan in its final version. And we will have several of our team members share with you what this strategic plan is about. You have in your packets the version that has been already printed and provided to you. Within the presentations that we have, we will also have two examples of the execution of the strategic plan, one through the MTSS process and another one through the work that happens through the social-emotional support teams. One of the things that folks ask me often is, why a strategic plan, or what is a strategic plan? And so one way that I like to describe that is as a very informed hypothesis about how to use all the resources in a systematic way in our district. Our job is to make sure that we create the conditions for students to thrive, as well as our adults. And what we're trying to do with the strategic plan is to basically align those resources, align those inputs to make sure that we get to our final bottom line, which is making sure that every student has a chance to succeed in our system. I'm also really proud of the fact that this new version of the strategic plan has a component that is data-driven, and you will see that through the work that has been done to create a portal that would allow us to actually track the progress of every item in our strategic plan. So we will be discussing that when the team that is in charge of presenting that section will be up front. So I am really excited to have a team today that will be actually presenting the strategic plan, and I'm going to have Amara and her team, or the team that was instrumental in making sure that we consolidated the feedback of students, families, this body here as well, and different focus groups. All that information has been condensed and consolidated into the document you have today. And again, I'm proud to present the team that has made this possible. So Amara Nosike, she is going to introduce the entire team to do what they do best, is to bring the community together to do their best work.
Thank you, Dr. Carmona, and good evening, everyone. We are super excited to be launching the strategic plan and data dashboard today after many, many months of work. Most thrilled to introduce to you the leadership team that actually led the way on bringing the strategic plan to life. And so as folks come up and present, they'll introduce themselves and a bit about some of the work that they did to make the plan come to life. So this is the actual plan, but there's a slide deck presentation that should be up on the screen. No problem. A few moments. I think this is a leopard, I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah, while you're bringing up the slides, I'm happy to introduce the team. And so we have Jackie Peaks, the Chief Communications Officer. We have Tina Liu from SFLC. We have Ruth Santos, the Director of SFLC. We have Sam Elagine, our Director of Data and Accountability. And we have Teresa Rodriguez, our Director of Enrollment. And I can get you the slides, so let's take a moment. Yeah. Perfect. So why don't we go on to the next slide? Yeah, I think she's working on getting it in presenter view. Perfect. Okay. So this slide just kind of outlines all of the thought, the effort, the planning that went into bringing the strategic plan to life. I'm not going to go through each milestone, but we will kind of walk you through that throughout the presentation. And so I'll kick it over to Director Ruth Santos.
Can we get the next slide, please? Okay, so this was a slide that Amara particularly enjoyed sharing throughout the process because it really shows, I think, the wide and deep engagement that took place for this survey. We got representation from across the district, and part of the key to that was that we had a super accessible, open-ended 3-question survey that really allowed us to hear from staff, students, and families in multiple languages and from across the district. And there have been a lot of amazing people, not limited to the people who are here this evening, involved in the process, but I, of course, want to give a special shout out to SFLC staff and liaisons who really did an amazing job. They really met families where they were and really allowed everybody's voices to get heard. So the team went out to English classes, they went out to school events, we went to the markets, and really allowed everybody to give our voice. We were able to give recordings as part of the responses. It wasn't just written survey responses, and so there were many, many ways for people to access the survey, which was wonderful. And by doing that, they really ensured that everybody was heard, and honestly, I think the voices of all of the families were really a big part of the backbone of this strategic plan.
So next slide, please. So when I started at SFLC 2 years ago, I noticed that the impact of a lot of the work that we do with families can't be measured. A lot of it is qualitative. And similarly, in the classroom with what teachers and students are doing, a lot of that data can't be necessarily captured by numbers. And so in this surveying process, what was really powerful is that we were actually able to hear the voices from multiple stakeholders. And a part of the role that I got to play was to take each of those responses, the qualitative responses, code them together with Sam to come up with the themes that you now see on the slide here that really were kind of the emergence of the voices from all of the different stakeholders within our community. And so this was a very valuable process, and I was just a privilege to be a part of that. And I think we captured the voices of our students and our staff and our families in ways that we probably couldn't have done otherwise.
Thank you. This is Teresa. As the enrollment director, I have the pleasure of seeing families right at the start of the process, and then many different times if there are touch zones when they're involved in transitioning. And I think what I particularly enjoyed about this process was the root cause analysis that we did with families. It just gave us small suggestions. So, for instance, the August back to school event, which was something new, came really from a parent who's sharing there. I really want something at the beginning of the year where we could really see everybody and learn from every department. So I feel like there were some very tangible things that people were able to suggest that were actionable and people could put or bring to life, but also there are much larger concerns at things that might take lots of professional development time that have been fed to the groups that are planning that, or different types of initiatives that would be important. So I feel like the opportunity to hear from families broadly with those questions was something that allowed us to have this collaborative vision to say what are the things that we need to really raise up in our work. I'm grateful just to families for the time that they took to share those ideas and want to be able to really highlight with people what has changed as a result of this strategic plan.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So in addition to all of the great work that's already been described and that you have heard at various points throughout this process, what's before you tonight for the first time is the full digital layout with, we hired a local designer, I believe he's a Somerville resident. He's done work for the district and the city in the past, and he really embraced this. And unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight, but he said to me that his goal with this project was to highlight the diversity, equity, and the community work that's gone into teaching our children. And he said, thank you for letting me play a small part in this important project. So I want to thank Colin Barr for lending his time and expertise to this. Our goal was to bring all of what has been said before me to life. We really wanted to celebrate and include the voices in a good mix of students, ages, programs, staff, and I think in a 9-page, 10-page document, we really managed to do a lot of that. So we're really grateful for all of the staff and artists and photographers who helped us bring this to life. We will be launching this publicly this week. It'll be on the website. We'll be celebrating it and sharing it in our newsletter and on social media for weeks and weeks to come, tying it back to all of the great work that's been done, and also highlighting the data and the dashboard that Sam is going to share.
Thank you. So as Jackie had just mentioned, in tandem with the launch of the strategic plan on the SPS website, we're also planning to launch a public data dashboard, which we're really excited for. This data dashboard is really meant to allow for everyone in the community to really track our progress with us as we work on this strategic plan. It really is going to allow for transparency, accessibility, and accountability, right? So we can have a really one-stop shop for everyone to be able to access this data. It can be accessed via a mobile device. It can be translated in your browser to different languages, and it'll include the targets that we're hoping to hit with the different measures as well. So we're really excited about that. And as I mentioned, it'll be launching on the website with the strategic plan. Next slide, please. And in addition to the data dashboard, we're also, one of the things that we really focused on this year with the launch of the strategic plan was really making sure to ensure alignment with our school improvement planning process as well. So really thinking through how can we ensure that the priorities that we've set in our strategic plan are showing through as well in our school improvement planning process. And so you'll see that as you see principals present their school improvement plans later this year around February and through the spring. So principals will be presenting goals that are in each of the strategic areas outlined in our strategic plan, right? So the academic excellence, equity and access, wellness and joy, family and community engagement. We're really trying to think of how we can get all of us rowing in the same direction, so to speak. And we're really just constantly thinking of that continuous improvement cycle from a data-informed perspective as well. And if we go to the next slide, I think that that's just saying thank you and acknowledging everyone. I don't know if you wanted to. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you for that presentation. Are there questions or comments from my colleagues? Mr. Butone, and then Mr. Green, and then Ms. Barish.
I just want to extend my compliments to the entire team, particularly around the way you have weaved data along with the vision that we are coalescing around. I'm so excited to look at this dashboard and follow along and sort of start digging, and I think it's going to be tremendously valuable. So just kudos. I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Green, and then Ms. Barish.
I want to echo the thanks and recognize this is something we've been talking about for several administrations now, so the fact that we finally have it is exciting and a long time coming. That said, I'm curious to know how we're going to share it with the public. How will we make it available to the public? How will we let the public know it's there? What's our plan for that?
We'll be posting it on the website later this week. I don't know, Jackie's been putting together a robust rollout plan, so she can share a little bit more beyond how the website.
Through the chair, I think the question is not how will we, but how won't we be, because we, like Amara said, we have a pretty robust outreach plan that's going to extend over a couple of months. So this week, it will be on the website. We held our newsletter back a week for this purpose so that we can share it. We'll plan social media posts, and then, you know, everything that we're doing in the next weeks and months is going to tie back to that strategic plan. As we have benchmarks and data to share out, we'll make sure we're doing that. We're still developing that piece, but we're hoping to do it with a regular cadence, particularly here. Have, you know, as the warmer weather comes back around, do some community coffee hours and sort of events where folks can just engage with us and talk about this as well. So there'll be a number of opportunities, and we'll make sure we share that plan with you when it's ready.
Thank you. Ms. Barish.
Thank you. Through you, first, thank you. I think, as my colleagues have noted, this is really exciting. I think people, well, I shouldn't say people. I think it's exciting that there's going to be a data dashboard. Do you have a sense of when we might see that go live?
Sometime
No
this week,
pressure.
through the chair this week.
You said later this week?
Yes.
Awesome. That's tremendous. I was thinking like, March, but you guys are awesome. Great. Thank you.
I had Dr. Phillips and then Dr. Ackman.
I really want to echo my colleagues' thanks. This is incredibly impressive. And I would just urge you, I know we're at the very beginning stage, but please tell the world how amazing you are and what an amazing process you did. So I'm thinking like the American Superintendents Association annual conference. I think the needs assessment that you did and the extent to which it's actually community driven is out of this world, and I think you could get a great presentation out of that. Your ability to go from that to all the way to a plan to a dashboard to track progress is also really amazing. So I think we could be out front with this incredible process even before you've gotten into implementing very far.
Dr. Ackman?
Thank you. Through the chair, I again echo, this is wonderful. I'm really excited. But I will hope my unique take on the thanks is that we're willing to look at the harder things and work and talk about and address them. And I think that speaks to Dr. Carmona and Dr. Boston Davis's leadership and your execution, and that's how real change is made. So like, I thank you for being public and being honest even when it's hard.
All right. With that, Ms. Paton?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you. Congratulations. It's very exciting. And particularly the scope, it's beautiful. It's really beautifully laid out. And I'm just going to echo what my colleague said about the dashboard. It's something we've been talking about for many, many years. And so this is really an incremental change in the way we do things. And so that is humongous to me. I also just want to the chair, at some point we need to look at the school committee goals and how we want them to support and align with the strategic plan. So my request is that I guess we have a long-range meeting early next year and do that kind of work. And I'm happy to help support any way to set up the format or the process. I'm happy to be part of that. So thank you.
I feel like I probably don't even need to ask this because this team is so great, but I'm assuming this has all been translated into our target languages.
Through the chair, it has not been translated yet, but can work with.
But there's a plan in the works to make sure that happens. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. With that, thank you all again. And that continue with our.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. The work of the strategic plan is something that, again, is new to us, to the district, I would like to say. And the fact that this process has happened in different facets or different phases, that means that there are different tracks that are going at the same time. As you know, there's a dashboard that was discussed at some point, and then it became a reality. It's not yet running. It will be. But there are different pieces of the plan that actually are moving at different speed. There are two pieces we will be talking about today. That is the work around the social-emotional support systems and also the work around MTSS. Both of them have different stars, but both of them were actually conceived under the same umbrella of how do we make sure that the systems that we create are going to support kids ultimately to be able to thrive in our buildings. And so today, we will be presenting the work that is happening, one of the components of the MTSS work around creating systems of support for students. And Liz Doncaster and her team will be sharing how this component of the strategic plan that has taken a little bit of a earlier start is on track to continue to do the work for our kids. So Liz Doncaster and her team right now.
Thank you, Superintendent, Chair, and school community members. Thank you for having us tonight. We are excited to give you a short presentation about the work of the Social Emotional Behavior Intervention Team. I wanted to give a bit of a background as to the why we came to this decision to create this team. For the past few years since coming back from COVID, it became clear that we were experiencing escalating behaviors in our students around social emotional lagging skills, such as handling big feelings, peer relations, transitions throughout the day, and taking direction from adults. As we responded to these behaviors through the prescribed channels, which is a referral to our SST teams in every building, we found that these supports that would respond to these behaviors in classrooms were being more reactive than proactive, and simply because they did not have the time to do a comprehensive observation of the classroom or the student. These positions, deans, counselors, social workers, APs, and principals, had the responsibility to the whole school community, and the community was being impacted by the lack of attention from these positions because of the time they needed to spend in just a few classrooms around the district. That was the problem of our practice. And our director of special education had created a crisis team in his former district, so we looked at that model and we proposed our own version. The highlights of this team are it is a small team made up of behavior experts. They're not attached to any one school. They can respond to the hot spots around the school with a cycle of longer observation, which would create an in-depth quality behavior intervention plan, which would then be modeled and trained to those working directly with that student. And then there would be a period of follow-up to make sure that the plan was working and if it needed to be tweaked. I want to acknowledge and thank you for approving of the 2 budget positions, the new positions that were needed to create this team. And included in your packet tonight, there is an email from Amy Candelora, who is an AP at the Argenziano, which is one of our biggest K-8s, and she wrote a very poignant email thanking Kevin and Camisa, who you'll meet tonight, about their work that is done at the Argenziano, and it is really a poignant letter to, this is exactly what we want this team to create. And I just want to read one sentence, or a couple of sentences. In addition to the positive impact on students you've worked with directly, your efforts have had a ripple effect across our school. We've been able to better support other students in need, and the culture of our school has been enriched by the collaborative, hands-on approach that you've modeled as a team. So that's just one little bit of feedback. And with that, I'm going to bring up Kevin Van Horn, who is the BCBA on the team. They'll introduce each position. He's the team lead, and he'll take it from here.
Next slide, please. So yeah, thank you, Liz. So yeah, I'm Kevin Van Horn. Just a little bit about me. So I'm new to Somerville. I've been a BCBA for 10 years. Before that, I was a special education teacher. My background's in elementary ed, so I've been on the teaching side. And I know, really the wonderful work and the hard work that teachers really do across their day. But as a BCBA, I've had the opportunity to train and consult with teachers, train and consult with parents, work with students and clients of, all the way from early intervention all the way up to adulthood. And so that was kind of the experience I brought to this team, and had a wide range of different experiences coming in. And so, as the person kind of chairing this team, I'm managing the referral tracker. I'm reaching out to those referring parties, so whether it's an assistant principal or school adjustment counselor, to set up an intake interview and learn a little bit more about why that referral is being made. And then after that, it's about scheduling observations, seeing what's going on within the classroom, collecting some data, and then making decisions on if there need to be follow-up observations, if more data needs to be taken, or if, we know what to do, and let's get a plan in place and work to help the student that is being referred to us. So I'll kick it off to Nadia. So next slide, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Nadia Curry. I am the clinical social worker as part of this team. So a lot of what I do as needed, I provide short-term solution-based kind of clinical intervention and support if there's any mental health or behavioral concerns with the students that are being referred. I like to kind of look at if there's any safety concerns, and then also I think the biggest part of the social worker role is kind of assessing if there's any recommendations for referrals that are needed for students or their families. A lot of times I collaborate with the social worker that's school-based that's there. They're pretty familiar with the student that's being referred, so if they have providers already in the community, if they don't, I kind of see what would be like the best fit and see what would be the most helpful at that current time, whether it's the families that need stuff, whether it's grief counseling, something going on in the family outside of the school, or if there's something that we can kind of do with our embedded services within the schools. Next slide, please.
Hi, I'm Kamisa Ositz. I'm the registered behavior technician. I'm also a grad student studying applied behavior analysis, and also Somerville Public Schools alumni. And a little bit about me, I worked in the field of ABA for about 3 years as an RBT, providing services to students specifically in the autism spectrums, in the home setting and in the school settings. And I was interested in this role to gain more experience hours for school and to apply ABA in more of the gen ed settings. And part of my role as an RBT for this team is to assist with observations and data collection. I also help train and coach the staffs and the teachers on how to implement our intervention plan. And then I also provide one-on-one support to the students as needed while taking any ongoing data on their behaviors. Next slide, please.
All right, so here's a summary of kind of different services and support that are provided. So kind of touched on it before, but it can range from, kind of a one-time observation and then recommended strategies, maybe it's based on classroom management or just little tweaks to an existing plan that might be in place for the student. It might be a series of observations and consultation sessions regarding challenging behavior and those recommended strategies. In most cases, we want to do on-site training and coaching for that classroom staff so they really know how to respond, so it's clear, if behavior happens, this is what you're doing, and this is what you're doing when that student is showing all those pro-social skills we want to see instead of the behavior. We develop behavior support plans with an emphasis on practicality and functionality in a classroom. And I'm not going to tell a classroom teacher to do something that I know they can't do when they're trying to educate every single student in the classroom. And then, like Kamisa just mentioned, we do, on a case-by-case basis, we'll say, yep, this classroom can utilize a little more individual support where Kamisa is helping to implement the intervention plan at the beginning, make sure, we have a good plan, and then she fades back, continues to train the teacher, and then, they take over ownership of all of that. I know you have this in your packet, but there's a flow chart of the process for the referral team. So for the referral, so referral comes in, I reference the referral, I schedule a meeting with those referring parties, meet with them, get a little more data, get a little more information about the behaviors that we're seeing, and then set up those initial observations. And then after that, based on those observations, again, go through the process. Is it a one-time observation? I go, oh, I have an idea of what we can do here. Let's get an intervention in place and see if we can get an impact. Or is it, oh, okay, I'd like a little more data. I want to see a little more what's going on. See the kid, at different times of the day, if it's something that is happening across the student's day instead of just, during specials or during a certain transition or something like that. And then, going through and applying that intervention, coaching and training the team, collecting that ongoing data, making sure they're comfortable, and then once we're seeing behavior in a spot we want to see and see those pro-social skills in a spot we want to see, checking in with the teachers and making sure they're comfortable, things are still working, see if they have any questions about, hey, this thing popped up and how do I respond here? And then this is the, again, it should be in your packet, but this is the referral form that those referring parties fill out that just gets some background information in terms of, what are the behaviors of concern, does the student have an IEP, does the student have a 504, what other pertinent information is in there, and then just see, what intervention strategies have they tried? I want to see that they're trying intervention strategies, that they've done different things with this student. I want to see the data if they have it, and that gives me, a much better footing for when I go in for that interview and go in that observation because I know it's been tried already. All right, next slide, please.
So these are kind of some trends that we've been seeing so far this school year with the referrals that we've been getting in. So these are the referrals we have, which ones are completed, which are still in the intake assessment phase, the interventions, the ones that are on hold, and then some that we found were just not appropriate for what we're doing here. Next slide, please. And then, as you can see, these are kinds of the behaviors that we're starting to see this school year and the reasons for the referrals. So a lot of kind of like disruptive classroom behaviors, some aggression, elopement is kind of what we've seen a lot too. And then we did have a case of inappropriate touching, but these are kind of the social emotional behaviors that we've been seeing so far. Next slide, please. And then in terms of what services are already kind of being done, these are kind of the outliers of the students that have been referred that are on IEPs already, those that are on 504 plans, and then as you can see, the majority, kind of half of which is that do not have any IEPs or 504. So it's kind of really important that our team is coming in and putting in place something that's really going to be supportive in the classroom environment. Next slide, please. And as you can see here, we've kind of broken it down by the grades that we're seeing. So for the most part, it's a lot of pre-K and fourth grade, interestingly enough. I don't know if that's COVID related or not. And then kind of like the runners up are kindergarten, second, third, and then below that is first and fifth is kind of the trends we've been seeing so far. Next slide, please. And then we kind of broke it down by schools of our referrals. So as you can see, Healy is the front runner. We've been getting a lot of referrals from Healy. And then most of the other schools have kind of been pretty even with our Genziano Brown, Kennedy West, and then Winter Hills kind of behind that. And then Capuano East, we haven't yet received any referrals at this time. Next slide, please. And then the last kind of data point we wanted to kind of bring up was the primary languages that were spoken at home based on our referrals. So English is the majority of all the languages, and then runner-up is Spanish, with Haitian Creole and Portuguese being the other kind of ones we've been seeing. Next slide, please.
So this is sort of an example case review that kind of goes through the process, kind of shows more information about, kind of the practically, how the team worked in this instance. So we received a referral for, it was a 6-year-old, he's in first grade. There was no IEP or 504 at the time. The family primarily speaks Portuguese at home. So we received the referral, and the reason for referral is listed here, but, the student was reported to only maintain focus for very short periods of time, which often results in aggressive outbursts, such as yelling, crying, kicking. So far, the only work he has completed has been with a teacher or professional one-on-one by his side, providing constant reminders and support. Additionally, the student elopes from the classroom and school building and also hides from adults when he does that, which was pretty significant safety concern. And I think that was, really the major reason for the referral is that, the student had gotten out of the school building several times, and then he goes to hide after he does that. And obviously, that's significant in terms of safety. Next slide, please. And so for this student, I received the referral, I believe it was on 10/8. Next day I set up and was able to join the SST meeting, conducted an intake with the assistant principal on that date, reached out for the teacher and for an interview with the teacher, set up that interview block with the teacher, got some more information, and then right after that set up opportunities to go and observe the student. And these were done at different periods within his day, on different days, so I could kind of capture, what his full school day looks like there. So the observation and recommendation report was drafted and then reviewed with the school team just to talk it through, and then we had planned to start the intervention on 10/28. Unfortunately, the student was suspended on 10/25 for being aggressive with the dean, and so he did not return until 10/31, which is when the intervention plan began. And so the plan that we developed, really determined that the student engaged in behavior to escape from non-preferred tasks, so a lot of schoolwork that was tough for him, as well as access attention and or get tangible items as part of that. And so we worked with the school team. We said, really, what's practical here? What can we do that you're going to be able to implement? The classroom teacher was wonderful. She already had a classroom reinforcement system that the student was familiar with, so we just kind of piggybacked on that. We really focused on reinforcing on-task behavior, following directions, completing transitions, which is when they typically saw the more problematic elopement behavior, and just making it clear that high-quality attention was provided in the classroom for being on task and not for engaging in behavior. So data was taken on those behaviors, so elopement, yelling, throwing items, hitting, kicking items before the intervention started. And then Camisa initially helped provide that intervention plan in conjunction with me and the classroom teachers. And she's going to talk a little bit about the data there. So next slide, please.
So this is the graph showing the data before intervention. It shows the total amount of behaviors happening per day. And these are the behaviors that Kevin mentioned in the previous slide. As you can see, there's an average of 10 problem behaviors happening within these 2 days here. Next slide. And then this is the data for after intervention. As you can see, we started with a high rate of behaviors happening, but then over time, as we continued to implement our intervention plan, you could see that the behaviors went down. And then by November 14, that's the point where the teachers and the staffs were fully trained on how to implement our intervention plan. And from then on, you could see we had 0 instances of problem behaviors happening, which showed us that the intervention plan was implemented correctly and that it was successful. Next slide. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Thank you very much, colleagues. Dr. Ackman.
Thank you. Through the chair, this is wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that, we're making this investment in the well-being of our students. I have like a small question, a larger question. The small one is, can you define elopement? I don't know what it is. And then the larger question is, you mentioned the anecdote of this one student, how engaged the teacher is. And I know we have a lot of above and beyond excellent teachers, but I surmise that not all of Somerville's teachers are as ready to actively engage and or even those that do most of the time, we all have rough days. How do you engage with staff when they're, and how do you support staff and when they're not as open as one could be at their most open to engaging with this? Does that make sense?
Yep. So in terms of elopement, as a BCBA, we operationally define everything. I didn't operationally define those behaviors here, but basically the student was running out of the classroom. The technical definition was crosses a threshold without giving the direction to transit, something like that. But so he was actively running out of the classroom, usually screaming, crying, kicking, doing things like that. And then, like I said, finding a corner, finding somewhere that he can hide. And a lot of, the really significant behavior was that he was either on the playground and leaving the playground area, going more into the community, or leaving the school building and going out. In terms of interactions with the teachers and everything, I have to say I've been pretty lucky in that really, because of the way the referral system works, really the teachers are the ones that are bringing up these concerns. It's coming up at SST, and I would say in the vast, vast, vast majority of referrals, the teacher is the one that's like, I want to help, this is really impacting my classroom, and they're, they want to try things, and so there is the buy-in. But that's always something where, with this particular student, we did try. We implemented the plan. I was like, maybe let me tweak this. We tried something. They were like, we can't feasibly do that. And I said, okay, let's make a different tweak. We kind of adjusted it slightly again and made sure it was practical. But that's, every teacher is going to have a different teaching style. Every teacher is going to have a different system in their classroom and expectations. And it's all about, okay, what are your expectations? What are the behaviors, that are really problematic for you? And just talking to the teacher and being like, okay, I got you. We can figure this out and make sure, we're there to support, and, what is a feasible way that we can address this? And, like I said, if a plan isn't feasible and practical, I'm not going to recommend it to a teacher. So I really try to make it really simple, something they can do on their own, or if they have a paraprofessional in conjunction with that paraprofessional.
Mr. Bitton.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Last spring, when we were talking about budget, and I would talk to families, this formation of this team was the one unit that I identified as like a pivotal, transformational sort of element for our district, something I'm really excited about. And I'm so, just first of all, thank you for being here and for serving in our district in this capacity. I think this team has the potential to be doing really essential work, and I'm hearing the beginnings of it. So it's just really exciting, and thanks for your tremendous work so far. I did note that you've only, from beginning to end, completed 4 interventions, right, at this point. There's something like 14 total, if I'm looking at the numbers. And they're at various stages. But so we've come through, a small number. And so our data set is small. It's hard to draw firm conclusions from that. So I have a number of questions, which I will, first of all, just ask one and get back in line if I need to. But noting that there may not be enough data to answer, and I will respect that. But I guess the first question I have is about access to this team and the services that you provide. So if an educator has a student or a situation in their classroom that is intractable and or maybe not intractable, I'm sorry, that they identify as needing heightened support, who makes the decision? Who makes the referral? And how does the team supporting that student go about that? What's the process?
So when a teacher is implementing all her Tier 1 interventions, and she has done all the steps, or they have done all the steps in the classroom, they have redirected, had maybe a conversation with the parent, an email. Hey, they've asked the dean maybe to come in and take a look. They've asked the counselor to come in and take a look. At that point, the decision is made with the teacher, the counselor, or whomever they were asking for help, that it is time to refer them to the student support team. And it's at the student support team that we make referrals to this team and other services that we provide in the city. So the teacher would reach out first to the support team in the building, which is the dean, the counselor, the social worker, and then through that work with them when they realize the challenges are still there and this needs a little bit more observation, and we need a more comprehensive behavior plan, intervention plan, then it goes to the student support team and they make the decision whether to refer to the social emotional behavior intervention team, or do we need embedded services, and that's where the decision is made.
So if I understand correctly, would it be a consensus among that team, and it doesn't go up then to the principal or someone at the school level, does it?
Well, the APs and principals run these student support team meetings, so they would know about this student already, and they would have discussed that already. And so it does take a group think, but it all is implemented with the experiences from the teacher in the classroom who's doing the daily work with that student. So that's where we start, and then we reach out from there.
I'll call on myself with a question, then Ms. Patone. Can you tell me a little bit about how equity and inclusion considerations come into play in your decision-making about either what's going on or what we should do?
Yeah, I mean, really, at this point when, a referral comes in, again, we're looking at the data, we're seeing the information that's going on, with students, depending on if they are receiving services, if they have an IEP, if they have a 504, something there, I want to review that document, I want to see how that's being implemented. There was a referral that we had received that I did an observation, first observation today, where the student had a BCBA on the grid, and so I was, ooh, there's a BCBA there, there's a behavior intervention plan, and I really kind of I reached out to that BCBA, I talked to them, and made sure, I had all the facts going in and seeing that feasibility, and it was a little more of like, can we tweak the plan so that it's easier for the teachers to implement and see if it can be there? In terms of the equity inclusion, when the referral comes in, I'm looking at the data, I'm looking at the information there, and really at this point there's only been one referral that we've said, it's not appropriate for this team because the student was really requiring only tier 1 supports, and it was more, they weren't displaying motivation to do their work, and I was like, it's not really that tier 3 plus model. And then there were 2 other referrals where we were, in process of either, doing the intake or doing observations, and the student was either hospitalized or family decided not to send them back to school until there was like a reentry meeting or something like that. Hopefully that answered it.
Thank you. Ms. Patton.
Thank you, through you, Chair. First of all, I very much appreciate how you represented the data and shown that you're serving the broad population of students. So it's really exciting to see that, it's I don't want to say cross-functional, but sometimes we get very like, this is special ed, this is regular ed, this is the kids on our 504, but you're serving all of these students, and so that is really reassuring to me in terms of how we're, I guess breaking down silos in some ways is one way to put it. Based on your previous answer, what I'm hearing is that this is not the only way that we put in place a behavioral support plan. So there are mechanisms within the schools themselves to collect data, evaluate, and create support plans and support staff to implement those plans. This is the situations of where students are those are not good enough to meet their needs, and so there needs to be a more dedicated effort. So I just wanted to kind of point that out to all of us, that we're doing this work in lots of different places, and this is sort of a kind of the task team that comes out when we've gotten to the place where the things that we're doing in the district or in the schools is not good enough. And there's a lot of students that work, it does serve them. So I just want to clarify that the reason that it's hitting 14 kids is that, there's lots of students that need support, and we do put in behavioral plans regularly within schools, but that we have this kind of next level of support, and I'm really pleased for obviously our students, but also for our educators. So thank you.
Mr. Bitton?
Thank you, Chair, through you. My next question is about tracking effectiveness. And I did really love that sort of asymptotic slope of the one case study you presented. But the timeline there is very short. I'm wondering what plans you have for follow-up over a longer timeline.
So are you thinking kind of like that example of a student who the plan was effective, you're seeing that behavior and then following up after the fact? Or just in general, like if you don't get that kind of response right away, and then kind of what the longer?
Well, yeah, no, I think it's the former. I think it's,
okay.
Sometimes when you implement a plan, things snap into place, and then if you step away a little bit, you may start to get that behavior again. So I'm wondering about the sustainability of the plans.
Yeah. So I'll kind of mention 2 points there. So for that particular student, it's a great question. I literally just checked in with that classroom today. I had reached out to that teacher, and that student was engaged and doing work, which is really the first time he had done that. He was, during our observations, they would do math rotations, and they would go to different centers, and he wouldn't even finish the first rotation in the entire time. The other class, the other students did 4 rotations, and the teacher was like, he did all 4 rotations. He didn't get all the work done in the rotations, but he did all 4 rotations, and she was really saying like, it's a breath of fresh air. It's so, and I said, you have the tools, you know what to do, and that's part of the coaching. I want to make sure that teachers aren't just following the plan and reading off that. It's teaching them to use those strategies, use those tools. And so, for instance, there is a pre-K student. I also checked in with this teacher today. It was another student who we completed the intervention plan with. And I had seen, I reach out to the teacher, and she noted a couple behavior episodes, and we talked about it. And I said, okay, but do you feel like you have the tools to address it? And she's like, yep, this is what I did, this is what I did. And I said, that's exactly what I would have recommended. And then from that, we talked a little bit about, okay, when are you seeing these behaviors? It seemed like there was something different going on there. And we talked through, okay, like now because we have behavior relatively, under control and at low levels, you can see some other gaps that are existing. And this child in particular needed explicit instruction in social pragmatics, flexibility, frustration tolerance, things like that. And I was like, okay, he's accessible now for that learning and teaching to do it. And so we talked about some strategies there. They're actually going through the evaluation process, and that's going to be next week. And so I'm following up with her after that to really talk about, again, those practical elements and how can you work on, the skills that we're seeing as a need as part of that evaluation process.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Last one, I promised. So oftentimes when there is, at least from what I understand, this high level of support that becomes needed in the classroom, families are aware that there's disruptions in the classroom, and I'm wondering how the district, I don't know if it's your team or the district, communicates with families to sort of let them know, broadly speaking, not in the particulars of a certain student, but broadly what the plan is for this intervention, and then I don't know if resolution is exactly the word that I'm looking for, but sort of what they should expect, if anything. And I know this is a little bit of a tricky question, but anything you can answer would be welcome.
So as always, we want to respect the confidentiality of the student and the behaviors and the class, but we do, this is a pilot, and so we have let families know that we have the intervention team coming into the classroom. We have not shared the actual details of the behavior intervention plan for that particular student, but I think it does reassure parents that we are aware that this is a deeper issue. This is a maybe tier 2, tier 3 issue, and we have now a professional behavior team that's going to come in and with a new set of eyes and do the whole full long cycle. So we have let families know that. But as we move through the pilot and we move through this year, we will decide how these plans overall in a general sense can be shared with the community, because we are creating communities in our classroom, and what would be the best way to handle that, always keeping the confidentiality of the student in mind. But the two cases that Kevin has described, you will see a shift in the classroom. So I would think that the students might come home and be reporting less or feeling safer in the classroom as the behavior plan and the behaviors decline. You might hear from your student, and then when we can share as a whole from the teacher or from that perspective, we'll see how we can do that. But I'm just always very mindful of keeping the student confidentiality and in place. We are understanding that we are creating communities in these classrooms, so we need to reassure parents as well who have experienced some maybe unsafe behaviors in the classroom. So I know where you're going, and we do the best we can, and it's a pilot program, so we'll have to work through it.
Thank you.
Jump quickly. I know so first of all, I wanted to, there's a lot of comments alluded to the fact that this is a response intervention for kind of critical cases. So I think that Ms. Piton mentioned the fact that this is one of the tools, the many tools that we have developed as a district. I think the biggest part is that also at the beginning of the school year, I know we did some norming around what requires a teacher referral to the office, what requires an intervention. That norming happens within the context of what do we think of behavior. So behavior, we understand that as language, and usually tells us something. Sometimes it's a lack of skills, self-regulation, maybe many things, but we also are trying to make sure that we are trauma-informed in our district. I think that Dr. Ackman alluded to the fact that different teachers respond in different ways. We also know that our institutions of higher ed don't do a good job as far as training educators in terms of social-emotional. So a lot of that is left up to the buildings and up to the system, but we want to make sure that we create a community in which we understand that the work that happens in classrooms happens within the context of a community. That small classrooms and teachers actually who manage to get to that place of creating a community, that's often when you actually can reframe behavior also as a response to something. And in some cases it's very difficult, but for the most part, having a framing that provides kids to know that we all are different, whether it's either we learn math better differently or literacy or self-regulation, that kind of conception allows students to understand that when we're in this space together, we will be solving those challenges together. So I just wanted to give a little bit more framework around the fact that the social-emotional needs in the district, which is part of the strategic plan, is to really conceive classrooms as spaces where students can thrive regardless of their starting place.
Dr. Ackman.
Thank you. Through the chair, in response to Dr. Carmona, I couldn't agree more. One of the things I am curious about, and this may not be for this team, but I am curious how the district is communicating that, because I agree, and I've certainly had those sort of conversations one-on-one with parents. I think, as adults, we're of a generation where difficult kids were taken out of the classroom, and that was that. And I have heard anecdotally, I mean, my kids at Healy, we saw the, referral right there. People talk, parents asking me about that, and I have said, we all deal with a variety of people in our lives, and this is a skill for your child to learn, is how to be in a classroom with, a child who has different ways of engaging. And so I'm wondering if there is sort of a communication strategy for families, because it is innovative and important, but not, I would say, especially what adults are used to seeing and hearing from school. And so is there a way that we're communicating that?
Through the chair, so we have been doing these restorative sessions to talk about what is the role of restoration in a classroom, and part of that is also when a student has broken the safety or the trust in the space, what do we do and how do we do it? And so the responsive classroom, the restorative justice, and then all the other systems that we use are aimed to that, just to create the space for kids to actually process the behavior. Are we doing it perfect? No, we're inviting families to join us for those sessions, and that is a never-ending process. We will continue to communicate through principals. I think the information that comes through principals is probably the best way in which it reaches families, but I'll let...
And we also, this team is in our social emotional development plan, which has been published, as you know, through this committee and also on our website. This team is on our website. And you make a great point, Dr. Ackerman. How are we letting parents know that we have this ability? So that should really come through the classroom teacher, the dean in the SST meeting, or the counselor in the SST meeting, that we've decided to go ahead with a little more. So you might have visitors in the classroom. A teacher's going to have to explain that there's going to be visitors in the classroom. And so I think we need to think that through as far as when the team comes in. So the students in the classroom, obviously the teacher will let them know, but then we have to do that next level out. And so we're always thinking of that, and thank you for bringing them out. You just gave me food for thought, and so we're going to have a conversation about how, when we do bring this team in, we should really let the parents know that there's an observation team coming in. We don't necessarily have to say exactly why, but we can let them know that the team is coming into the classroom. So thank you for that.
Ms. Pitone.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I look forward, I hope that as we get to the end of the year that we can share more data on this. Not necessarily having to come out and doing a whole presentation, because obviously that's a lot of time on your part, but I could imagine that what we're seeing referrals by school is also just a reflection of once people have a good outcome, then they say this has worked for us, we'd like to bring you back in, and it is not necessarily a reflection of the social emotional status of students in different schools. So I imagine it's a positive reinforcing situation. So I would imagine seeing lots of schools with not 1 million, but many referrals. So I look forward to that data later. Thank you.
With that, thank you for bringing this innovative program to life, and thank you for staying late to come talk to us about it tonight.
I just want to thank the hard work of this team. You can see how passionate Kevin and Camisa and Nadia are, and so I'm glad that I got a chance to speak to you tonight and let that show. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. And so now I'm really thrilled to bring up our superintendent fellow, who is a doctoral resident in the Doctor of Education Leadership program at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, Bobby Beretta. As you likely know, MTSS is a theme throughout the strategic plan. And Bobby's strategic project is on MTSS. So he is going to share a bit about an update, a progress update on the work that he's engaging in during his residency in Somerville. So with that, Bobby.
Good evening, school committee. Thank you all so much for having me here. Dr. Boston Davis, thank you for the introduction. I want to start by saying I am so grateful to be here in Somerville, be learning from you all. It has been a true joy to be in this district for my residency. Really excited to talk to you a little bit about MTSS tonight. And Crystal, I have some really show-stopping transitions planned in my slides, so if you could put it in presentation mode, that would be ideal, but if you can't, no sweat. I will come back and make sure I have additional show-stopping transitions at some point in the future. So, no transitions, no great ones on the first slide. But district-wide MTSS, what are we talking about when we talk about MTSS? We're talking about an acronym that stands for multi-tiered systems of supports. This triangle is the figure most commonly associated with MTSS. My work is mostly focused on the sort of academic side of how we support students. So the triangle sort of represents the sort of tiers of support that we provide students with, the base of the triangle being what every student gets, and then as you sort of go up, increasing interventions. Oh, you can see my notes too, that's great. I don't have notes on every slide, so. Next slide. Yeah, there's that transition. And then one more. I'll just say click, and then we'll move forward. There you go. Well, keeping with tonight's theme, why am I focused on MTSS? Well, like Dr. Carmona said, we're talking a lot about the strategic plan tonight, and in fact, MTSS appears in the strategic plan. I do apologize for my voice, too. The one night I get invited to school committee, I'm hoarse. I'll come back in the spring with my ASMR voice, I promise. It is also in Dr. Boston Davis's academic plan for this year as well. And so, even though I'm here for residency, I'm working full time, I'm here to learn, I'm also here to serve the district. And I wanted to make sure that my project that I was focused on would be, very considerate of the district's priorities. And so, we tried to early on have conversations around what would be most impactful, and MTSS just kept coming up with every person that I was talking to, whether they were school-based staff or central office leader. Next slide, or click, sorry, click. So a couple of headlines that I think are really important, and I don't want these to get lost as I sort of dig into the weeds here. First is that there have been several prior efforts in Somerville to try to improve MTSS. Most of them sputtered. And that's likely because of capacity. MTSS is this really interesting aspect of district work that falls along the intersection of multiple departments, special education, academics, school leadership. And as a result, because there's not one person or one department that's in charge of it, the work of sort of producing the systems for MTSS actually falls onto schools. And so you'll see later on that a lot of our schools have really produced great systems, but what we're trying to do is increase some coherence and make sure that all students in SPS get a similar level of services. In addition to this being in the strategic plan, I also think it's important because if we do MTSS really well, we can save our staff time, we can save our district money. These are really important goals for us as a district. But in addition, we can improve the equitable distribution of resources, particularly human resources that we have in our district. We can make sure that more students get access to high quality teaching, that we sort of create this data-driven culture that we know will yield benefits outside of just MTSS, and overall that our students that we're serving in this district will do much better. One of the things that I'm really adamant about is that we're not actually reinventing the wheel here. This is not Bobby comes in as the Harvard fellow and he's going to tell you all how to do MTSS. No. In fact, like I said, because there's not a lot of central office guidance, there hasn't been historically around this, we have seen lots of great practices sort of develop organically at our schools. The goal is just to sort of create more consistency and coherence across all 10 of the schools. And in doing that, we also want to make sure that we're trying to balance prescription with autonomy. We have some really brilliant leaders, really brilliant teachers at our schools, and we don't want to storm over and say, you have to do it this way. That really stifles innovation, and we don't want to stifle innovation in a district like Somerville where we are really known for some of our innovative practices. And much of the ideas that I'm going to talk to you about in the next few slides have been pressure tested with some school leaders and central office staff, and we feel pretty confident as a team that these are actually the right direction to go, and we're still looking for feedback from you all. Click. Okay, I got a show-stopping transition on this slide. I'm just going to forewarn you. So what are we actually trying to do? Well, one of the things is we want to codify some of our practices in a playbook and then produce a long-term plan for how the district can continue to improve MTSS. Like I said earlier, we're trying to increase coherence across all 10 of our schools. We want to make sure all of our students get the same level of support in a district of choice where students can move around. And also, this was really important too. This is my residency is a time-constrained residency. I'm only here through the end of April. We wanted to make sure that we saw some actual changes at the classroom level, that we wanted students to actually experience some of the sort of, really great consistent practices that we think can really improve student outcomes. Click. Oh, yes, yes. Okay, so what am I talking about when I say experiment? Well, there's 3 things that we have narrowed down on. As this project has progressed, we've learned that, this is a really, very, very busy year. We have lots of priorities already as a district, and we're starting to try to narrow the focus of what we can actually accomplish realistically and effectively in 1 year. So I got 3 things, but I'm going to focus on the latter. So I'll need 3 clicks back to back here, Crystal. You're doing a great job. Okay, so beautiful. So the first one is trying to reconfigure how our schools do what we refer to here internally as CST. This is child study. It's an acronym that we've developed that sort of replaces the MTSS acronym. We like acronyms in education, and we needed our own acronym here in Somerville. But I think there's an opportunity for us to sort of reconfigure how we're running our MTSS meetings at schools. I'm not going to talk to you about that tonight, but I do have other slides available that I can send you all later. I do think there's also an opportunity for us to expand software interventions. These are like personalized learning software that can really provide students personalized instruction and some of the foundational skills that they might need. But what I really want to focus on tonight is how we might be able to improve the effectiveness of what we here in Somerville call X-Block. Click. So what is X-Block? X-Block is actually a time built into almost all of our K-8 schedules, and it was originally designed, came on maybe like 10 years ago. I learned this in talking with some folks in our district who've been here for some time. Came on like maybe more than 10 years ago, and really is an opportunity for us as a district to create time where students who might have an IEP or who might be a multilingual learner, and we're going to get services from some additional providers, that time would be built into their school day so that they wouldn't miss core instructional time. Slowly it progressed into also a time where we would, as schools, provide interventions for students, right? Students that might need some additional math or literacy instruction. We had this time built into our school day. Some districts call this like a win block, whatever I need, right? Where we're really providing differentiated instruction. But like, many initiatives that were launched a long time ago, it has since sort of morphed and become something a little bit different. And in talking with folks initially, I learned that like maybe it's not actually doing what we want it to do. And so I tried to gather a little data to confirm what actually might be happening with X-Block. Click. And over the last month, I visited almost all of our K-8 schools, went into 41 classrooms in grades 1st all the way through 8th. And in doing that, I saw evidence of small group instruction in about 1/5 of the classrooms. And why was I looking for small group instruction? Well, small group instruction is usually a good indicator that we're providing differentiated instruction, like a targeted intervention for what students might be needing to, improve academically. And I was also looking for whether or not, if students weren't getting that differentiated instruction, if we might be using that time to teach students grade level content. And in fact, in only 2 out of 5 classrooms, 2/5 of those 41 classrooms, was there some evidence that students were actually working on grade level content. Oftentimes they're working on other things. Sometimes it's social emotional lessons. Sometimes it's maybe more of a study hall where students are doing things independently. But suffice to say, I think there's an opportunity for us to better utilize that time. Click. And when I say better utilize it, I think this is really critical. This time that we have built in for X-Block is roughly 12% of the instructional time that we have over the course of the week. We're talking like 2 to 3 hours of time that we have designated in our schedules to provide this kind of differentiated instruction, and it's not happening. Am I saying that that's because teachers are, not doing their job? No, I mean, again, we have not really provided a lot of clear guidance as a district, so I think a lot of this is on us. We need to do a better job of that. But the goal is really to try to get that time to be more effective for providing these targeted interventions for students. One of the metaphors I like to use a lot, and I think it's very apropos here in Somerville, is that we're often recommending students for surgery before we've even tried some lighter interventions like Advil. And what I mean by recommending them for surgery is we're saying initially, like, this student might be struggling in reading or math. They need to be seen by a reading specialist or a math specialist. We have maybe a dozen or so of those folks in our district. Well, that's a really intense intervention. When students get pulled from the classroom for sort of specialized instruction, it leaves a mark, like surgery leaves a mark. And oftentimes I think there's an opportunity for us to try some Advil in the classroom to see if that might not resolve some of these issues before we take these really intensive interventions, intensive in terms of what it means for students, but also what it means for the limited district resources that we have. So I think one goal here is to try to empower teachers and staff to provide these sort of tier 2-ish interventions for students during our X-Block, and then, per the theme of this presentation, really codify this so that we can keep on doing it long term. I'll talk a little bit at the end too. I think there's also an opportunity for us to really use X-Block here as an opportunity to support our advanced learners as well, and I'll speak a little bit about that towards the end of the presentation. Click. One of the things I thought was awesome is after doing some of these observations, I went into one teacher's classroom. This teacher was running small group instructions. It was fantastic. And I stopped by after the teacher had dropped their class off at specials, and I was like, hey, how did you learn how to do that? That was incredible. You were providing differentiated instruction. And the teacher was basically like, well, I do it that way because when I came here to Somerville, they told me that's what I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm supposed to provide small group instruction during X-Block, so that's why I do it. And I think that's really indicative of, how we as a district can really guide our staff to do the things that we know are most effective for students. Click. So what are we trying to actually codify here and propose? Well, I think, one example might be just a really simple, consistent structure for X-Block, encouraging teachers to pull small groups regularly to support them on reading, math, and other really critical foundation skills, and then making sure that other students also have enrichment activities. We know that in order to do this, we need to provide a lot of resources to our teachers who are already doing a lot of amazing work for us, implementing new curriculum in many grades. We got to provide them some professional development on actually how to do this really well. When X-Block launched maybe more than a decade ago, perhaps that training was provided at that time, but when these initiatives sort of start to wane, it's time for us as a district to invest in retraining our staff on how to do this really well. Another reason why I think it's really important for teachers to lead some of this intervention work, particularly at these, sort of tier 2-ish levels, is because they know their students really well, right? We don't want to send students off to a specialist that may not know them, who may not have taught them their core subject, when our teachers who are, classroom teachers, gen ed teachers are typically teaching those subjects, they know their students really well, they can actually, tailor their instruction to be more personalized for each individual student. And also because in many situations, you heard this a little bit with the SST meeting, where a referral is needed to move a student on to get some, specialized instruction. During X-Block, we don't need that referral. We don't need to have this sort of gateway meeting to then say, okay, yes, we will support the student academically. In fact, the time is already built in, and we can do it without having like an official, meeting that is very time intensive and may take a while to actually, get approved. Click. So just a visual representation here of what I think is going on and where I think we can improve. Currently what I said we're doing is we're taking our really great instruction that we're doing, rigorous tasks, safe, inclusive environment, and when that's not working for students, we're sort of moving very quickly to provide really intensive interventions with a specialist, either in small groups or sometimes one-on-one. Click. And I think there's actually a great opportunity for us to improve what is happening at this sort of tier 2-ish level. I like to use a 4-tier triangle here to be a little provocative, but there's actually no law that says the triangle has to be 3 tiers. But this idea of us providing this sort of less intensive intervention at this tier 2 time during this X block that we already have built into our schedules. And I do think that this time, per some of the other priorities that I mentioned, could be supported with the expansion of personalized learning softwares as well. Click. So a little bit about what I mean by X-Block also being a support for advanced learners. I think in the last few months, DESI released, I think it was like a 40-page document on advanced learners. And basically what they're suggesting, and you're starting to see this pop up a little bit more around the interwebs in education circles, is that MTSS is not just for struggling students. In fact, it's also it could also be a mechanism to think about how we support students who need accelerated learning opportunities. So we took the triangle that we love and we flipped it on its side to show that we can sort of use these tiers to visualize how we support students that need, additional instruction, but also students who need acceleration. And I think in a really optimized system, X-Block could be that for Somerville as well. Click. So just to recap here, I think, there's 3 goals that we're really trying to focus on for the rest of this school year. Trying to improve those meeting structures, to empower teachers, to actually make some of these intervention decisions themselves during grade time or content. What do we call it? Grade teams? Grade teams, yeah. Expanding access to instructional software, which we're already doing at some of our schools, and then trying to revitalize, reinvigorate X-Block. So what now? Well, one of the things that we're currently doing, we have to do this by law, is we're trying to revise our DCAP, but we're trying to revise the DCAP from a document that, just sort of exists on the website, nobody really uses, to actually be this document that codifies MTSS, and it can be a resource for school leaders, for teachers, and for parents to say, oh yeah, this is what happens when my student is struggling. This is how my student can get extra support. We also want to try to start nudging grade teams to, during common planning time, try to plan some of those, quote, Advil interventions for students that don't require a formal, child study meeting. And then there's a spelling error on this last one here, but try to also find some X-Block pilots, finding and supporting teachers who are ready for change, ready to start utilizing that X-Block to provide this, targeted and differentiated support. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. Thank you so much for your time, and I can't apologize for my voice, but I would love any questions, concerns, feedback.
Ms. Barish and then Ms. Patone.
First of all, thank you. This was a really clear and interesting presentation. I appreciate that. And I am excited because as long as I have been a parent in this district, which is 14 years, other parents have talked to me about differentiation and the challenges that their students have because the parents don't feel their students are getting the differentiation that they need. And I know that it's hard. I know that our teachers have immense responsibilities, and I believe that they are doing the best they can. Yeah. I'm glad to see that you are working on a system to make differentiation more possible, I guess. I am curious because, and I could be wrong, but my recollection is that X-Block isn't the only thing that's happening during X-Block. Like, band and orchestra may happen during that block in some schools, if not all schools. So I'm curious about how that figures into your planning, because the 12% of instruction time maybe is reduced in some cases if a student is doing band and orchestra. If they're not doing either, right, then the teacher has more access to them. So anyway, I just wondered how you're thinking about those complications.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. It's a great question. I think this is where we need to sort of turn back to our schools and our school leaders who know their schedules, who know their students really well, and empower them to, tailor the sort of baseline guidance that we're trying to provide. I have heard this from many schools that, yes, even some particular teachers are saying well, it's difficult to really get a consistent routine because I got band on Tuesday and I got this on, Wednesday. I think that's true. And I also think that for the most part, every time I walk through an X block, there are lots of students in classrooms and lots of students that I think could benefit from either some additional support. I don't even know these students, but I guarantee you they could benefit from some additional support or some sort of accelerated learning opportunities. So, again, I think to answer your question, those sort of more individualized, more nuanced decisions, I think we have to turn back to our principals, to our teachers, to our grade teams and say yes, these are some constraints here, but within this sandbox here, how can we play nice and make sure that students are getting what they need?
Ms. Patone?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. In addition to hearing about desires for differentiation, I've also heard questions about what is X block? Do with X block. We've actually had conversations with the superintendent of can we have a kind of analysis around X block and see what's going on, but it sounds like that's happening, so it's very exciting. In addition to what you saw with 1 and 5 doing small groups and 2 and 5 doing general ed classroom work, were you seeing that students were getting their services during that time, or do we still have students getting them? I mean, some of them obviously need more than one service a day, but I'm curious if we're actually getting that benefit for having that time set aside.
Yeah, that's a great question. Truthfully, I think that would be a question for our multilingual department, for our special education department. I think they would be better equipped to answer that question. What I can say broadly is that you're often seeing, various staff members come in and support students in, in different capacities. But I cannot speak, I don't have enough information to speak specifically to whether or not students are getting, the specialized services during that time.
Can I do a quick, so this is a follow-up to the superintendent. I would be curious if we did some analysis whether or not, and granted, if you don't think this is something that you want to put energy in or target on, but I think knowing how we're utilizing X blocks and whether or not it is realizing that is important in terms of interventions, whether it's our students who are learning English or our students who need special education support, whether or not we're realizing that potential of X block, I think has to be married with this work. I think that we need to be looking at X block holistically to determine the merits and the value and how we're getting the most out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yes and, if that makes sense. Through the superintendent, through the chair, this is just a general question. Do we do any PD that's directed towards how to make the most of X block right now?
Thank you, through the chair. And Bobby, if you've learned anything else, let me know. It's my understanding that there hasn't been X block specific PD in recent past, not to my knowledge. There have been some PDs on pulling small groups, for example. So, that can be applicable to X block, but an X block titled PD, I am not aware of anything in the recent past. I do think what I've learned, same as Bobby, when it was launched, there was a more effort from the central office.
Yeah, I would confirm. And the only thing I would add is that, it sounds like the narrative that I've gotten that makes the most sense is when we went to remote learning, a lot of those practices that we were sort of doing really effectively in in-person learning, X block doesn't really work well when you're doing virtual learning. So we probably lost some of the institutional knowledge around it, when we went to remote learning.
It's very exciting to think about refreshing this and seeing how we can get the most out of this time, assuming this time works for us right now. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ackman?
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for this. Thank you for continuing the tradition of the Harvard Fellows being thoughtful and innovative. This is really impressive. I'm curious if there's a vision and sort of the diamond that you shared for, like, I'll say, like, twice exceptional students, like an example of a child with dyslexia who happens to be, like, off the charts brilliant at math, like, where they, how that might work for them.
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say, relative to the Harvard Fellows, I think they've all been great, but few have had the PowerPoint transitions that I've had. So I just want to say, I think I stand out a little bit. No, in all seriousness, I think that's a great question. I mean, you know, my goal, Dr. Ackerman, right now is to really just try to create the foundation for what that could look like. I think there's still lots of dreaming and lots of visioning and then lots of actual planning for what services for students like that could and should look like in the future. And, you know, Desi, I think, is like thinking forward a little bit, putting out some guidance document, prompting us to think a little bit more clearly, okay, so then how do we build the foundation to do this really well in Somerville and innovate around that? So I think that's probably something that we're going to, you know, work on in the future, but I'll also leave that up to my bosses as well.
I have a question, and then Mr. Bitone. At the beginning of the year, I got some emails from a bunch of families being like, my kid's already on grade level before they've started. Can we use MTSS as the way to help them out? And I was like, well, 60% of our 8th graders aren't proficient in math, or 3rd through 8th graders aren't proficient in math. I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon. So it was very exciting to see you say, nope, Sarah, you're totally wrong. And we have this new vision of how we could use MTSS both for advancement as well as remediation. I'm wondering what kind of incentives or structures we need to put in place to make sure that happens, given the great level of need in our district and the fact that all the accountability system is set up to get kids to proficiency. What do you think we need to do differently to make MTSS also be useful for advancement?
Boy, that's a great question. Off the top of my head, I could say, I think it often comes down to really good training for our teachers, really clear professional development that is also supported by a really clear vision for, you know, for us as a district. Like, what is it that we want this to be? Now, I will say, when we're talking about MTSS for advanced learners, truthfully, yes, you're seeing this start to pop up around the interwebs. There are very few districts, like less than probably 1%, doing this really well. So, you know, this is also going to require some of our great minds in the district coming together and actually figuring out, okay, realistically, given some of the constraints that we have, you know, what could be some of these opportunities that we could provide students, you know, to accelerate their learning, to expand on things that they're really interested in, and to sharpen skills that they're already good, you know, fairly strong at. In previous districts where I've worked, I've seen things like the Genius Hour, like, you know, something along that line, which is like sort of a take on the what I need block, but sort of takes it to this level of like, this is, you know, for accelerating your learning. So, I mean, long story short, there's lots of work that still needs to be done to think about like what that could be, but it will probably start with us creating really clear vision, backing that up with some strong resources for teachers, and then really good development, really good training for them on how to execute in the classroom.
Thanks. Mr. Bitone.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I just want to extend my appreciation to Superintendent and your team and Mr. Beretta for putting your thoughts comprehensively around the MTSS. We just heard a presentation around the Tier 3. Your presentation, Mr. Beretta, was around Tier 2 or maybe 1.5, or I'm not sure where in your subversive triangle analogy that fell, but Dr. Phillips alluded to, you know, concerns of some families around, well, you know, is this district going to work for my children? I think is what that boils down to me, and I think that is a valid question for every family to ask when enrolling their student in a district, in any district. Is this the right fit? And the question we need to be asking as a district is, how are we supporting each child? And so I think that this line of reasoning is directly addressing that question. And so I just think it's a really important thought process, and I'm glad that we're engaging in this thought. I do, as a side note, want to assure anyone watching that in the Somerville Public Schools, we do not perform surgery in our classrooms.
Correct. Just a metaphor, y'all, just a metaphor. Thank you.
So anyway, thank you. That's it.
You want to say something, Superintendent?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit of context. Part of the reason why we chose to work around addressing access to students for learning regardless of the need is because that's what came through our focus groups and our feedback from educators. I think that we do better when we know better, and the need to know better is something that our educators have highlighted. So with the introduction of some of our software that will allow us to also create spaces for students to do the work independently, we will also be creating systems in which we can say, I cannot split myself in 10 different ways, but I can actually do some of the scaling that needs to be done in a classroom when students are in different places. So I think that I'm really thankful for the fact that we looked at XBlock as a tool or as a way to really get to this issue of access. Part of the larger conversation about MTSS is also what are the systems we currently have, because we have systems in different places at different levels. And so that is also what is going to come out of this process, which is norming around what are some of the best practices, how do we look at instruction when a child struggles, how do we look at the data, implement an intervention, come back again, and then do the same rinse and repeat. So we also have to elevate this idea of I can look at this challenge that a child has as a researcher, is that right? So behavior, what happens, how do we do it? And so I think that is a different entry points as to a challenge that is one that has to be resolved for Somerville to be an excellent district. And so this is part of the strategy. Really excited that the work that Dr. Boston Davis and Bobby are doing, and also very thankful for the fact that folks are opening the doors for Bobby to come into the classroom. So it's really exciting. It's really exciting.
Thank you very much for coming and talk to us about the great work you're doing.
Thank you all. And thank you, Crystal, for driving. That was excellent. Appreciate you.
Now we can move on to some reports from subcommittees.
Can there's some updates.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
Yes, I'm so sorry. It's my fault. Let's
No,
have the rest of the district
I still have
report.
some updates, and I promised that I was going to share them because this is related to some of the work that has happened in the district. And so I'm going to share some updates, and would like to thank the Ryan Harrington Foundation and the Quinlan family for their generous support for families at Thanksgiving. Working through the SFLC liaisons, they have helped to provide Thanksgiving meals for families in the district since 2015. And this year, liaisons were able to connect 117 families with much-needed support for food during the holiday week. Your generosity is so much appreciated and warmly received. Also, yesterday, the SFLC Basic Needs and Housing Support Services had their winter party for the families the office works with. Many families attended, and the event was fun, filled with children activities, cookies decorating, a hot meal, music, food, toys, etc. We are grateful for the support of the Mayor's Office, Connection Church, Somerville Recreation, Summer Promise, Project Soup, Alex Peary, Ayer Wellness, volunteers for the Somerville nonprofit group, and Give a Cake. It takes a village, and every year the community gathers around to celebrate these families. Also, a reminder of our upcoming school tours. The remaining dates are January 9 and January 30th of the next year. Everyone is invited to take a tour of one of our pre-K through 8 schools on these dates. The tours last about an hour and start at 9, 10, and 11, and noon as well. The tours of the Somerville High School are scheduled for February 12th and the 13th. The City of Somerville, in collaboration with SPS, is gathering information from Somerville families so that we can better understand your needs for after-school programs. This year, we formed an out-of-school time steering committee made up of staff from the city and SPS who work directly on out-of-school time programs. This committee developed a survey that was shared with all families earlier this month. It is available on our Facebook page. Thank you, everyone who was part of this process. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you. And now we can have some report of subcommittees. Rather than make you all search for it, I'm going to move that we approve the report of the school committee meeting for school building facilities and maintenance meeting from November 18th, 2024, and the school committee meeting for rules management subcommittee meeting November 25th, 2024.
Second.
There's a motion by me, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Any discussion? Ms. Barish.
Thank you. Through you, I just wanted to let our colleagues know that you may have seen in reviewing the notes that we passed Section A of the policy manual out of rules, but that was pending a legal review. And because we don't have, because I didn't have feedback from the legal team yet, I didn't want to put it on the agenda tonight. So hopefully that will be on the agenda for next week's meeting for the first reading.
Thank you. Barring further discussion, we have a motion by me, seconded by Dr. Ackman, to approve these reports. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. On to new business. We have some field trips to approve.
I move to approve the, can I do them together? I'll do them separately.
Thanks.
The January 23rd, 2025 field trip for 12 students from Next Wave Full Circle to attend Pat's Peak in New Hampshire. They will travel via Next Wave Full Circle van. The student cost is $25.
Second.
There's a motion by Eleanor Barish, seconded by Leron Bitone to approve this field trip. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next field trip.
I move to approve the February 13th, 2025 field trip for 12 students from Next Wave Full Circle to attend Pat's Peak in New Hampshire. They will travel via Next Wave Full Circle van, and the student cost is $25.
There's a motion by Ms. Barish, seconded by Ms. Bitone to approve the field trip on February 13th, 2025. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. We have a diploma request.
Motion to approve the diploma of Jennifer Mejia Benitez from Somerville, Mass.
Second.
There's a motion by Ms. Bitone, seconded by Dr. Ackman to approve this diploma request. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Jennifer Mejia Benitez. Brings us to acceptance of grant funds.
I move to accept all federal entitlement and continuation grants and all state continuation grants awarded to the Somerville Public Schools listed below. Mass Hire Metro North Workforce Grant for $229,468.85 to scale for out-of-school youth services, and a DESI Targeted Assistance Grant of $50,000 to Winter Hill Community Innovation School and East Somerville Community School.
There's a motion by Ms. Barish, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Any discussion? Ms. Bitone?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just curious, is this a new grant or something that's continuing? And I'm not sure what out-of-school youth services, but I'd love to hear just a little blurb about it at some point. It could be an email or whatever.
Through the chair, point of clarification, for which grant?
For the scale grant, because it sounds kind of awesome, and it would be nice to hear a little more about it. Thank you.
Should I
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Happy to speak briefly. I think Director Jocelyn Marte spoke about it briefly when she had that presentation along with Jim Hatchie. And so this is for students who are out of school. They're over age, or I think it's 16 to 22 or ish. So they're school aged but out of school. and they're providing a lot of classes and opportunities for either GED or HiSET or all those things. So, but I can pull Director Marte's report and give more details there. But it is a wonderful new grant that she's received.
So it's a new grant?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I think we can vote on it. All in favor of accepting these grant funds?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Moves us to unfinished business. The MSBA update. Is that you, Dr. Carmona?
Yes, that is me. So good news, we are on the MSBA board meeting agenda for December 13, so that is great as we expected. That, we knew the trajectory to that was very positive. At this meeting, the MSBA board will vote on whether we will be moved to the next phase or not, which is the forming the project team. We don't foresee any reason we would not be invited forward. We are in constant communication with our dedicated project team at the MSBA team, so we don't anticipate that will be an issue. I cannot say that is this fully guaranteed because that's not up to me, but my understanding is that we will be, again, all things go well, it will be approved. And the next phase for this will be, after this, will be the hiring of the OPM and the hiring of a designer architect. So those are the two things that will be coming after that.
Ms. Patone.
Thank you, through your chair, to the superintendent. I'm curious, is this a meeting that the district attends? Is it a virtual meeting? Because way back in the olden times, we used to go downtown and we'd send a couple school committee members and we'd all be like, yes. So I'm just curious how that gets handled now.
Through the chair, yes, it is somewhat formal, but it's a virtual meeting, so we have to submit the names in advance, and it just, it is a very formal process, so they will announce it, and then we'll be part of that through invitation.
Mr. Bitton?
Through you, Chair, if this is something that can be watched online, I welcome anyone who would like to join me for a watch party to celebrate what I hope will be a successful next phase.
I will provide the information as soon as I confirm that is the case, yeah.
If there's nothing further, next up is items from committee members. Seeing as we have none, let's all stand and wish our deepest condolences to the families of Kenneth Lonergan, retired Somerville High, who was working as a special education teacher and administrator, and also to the family of Virginia Ginny Smithers Sanders, the mother of Tarn Stefanos, a longtime building sub at Somerville High, and also the woman for whom our Ginny Smithers Pool at the John F. Kennedy School in Somerville was named in honor of. Please stand for a moment of silence. And with that, we are now adjourned.
Recording stopped.